but what is this third project? Should we do this, not do this? It seems like a very big task. So I thought we'll just dedicate this session to helping you out. I never thought that I'll need to guide students through using ChatGPT and generative AI, but I realized that in Hong Kong, maybe it's a little bit more difficult with VPNs and stuff. So I'm going to show you some things at the beginning, and then you can decide if you want to stay and work with me on those or not, but you'll have my full attention for this session. So if you want to stay, we can work on this together. I'll sit with you, guide you. But my main message for you is that project 3 is worth doing. It's probably the one that's most exciting of the 3 projects because you get to test your own hypotheses. If you're also taking the other class, and we have a few of you, then you can actually do the same thing that you're doing in the other class also in this class. Or if you want to do something more exciting, you can extend this to something else. So in the other class, I'm teaching advanced social psychology. And over there in advanced social psychology, we're trying to do more good and do good better. And over there, the main task is a bit more research oriented, but basically you have 2 charities that are exactly the same on all factors, but one. And we're trying to understand how people think about charities, comparing charity A to charity B. They have a very strict format of so charity A and charity B need to be exactly the same on every possible factor, aside from something that might represent a cognitive bias. So for example, charity A has an overhead of 10% and charity B has an overhead of 20%. And people really don't want to donate to charities that have overhead. So even though they're exactly the same, so they save the same number of lives for the same amount of money, then people still tend to go for the one that has lesser overhead. So if there's no preference whatsoever, then people will just allocate 50-50. They don't really care. But we show that people actually contribute to the charity that has less of an overhead. Yeah. So over there, they need to do a Qualtrics and they need to simulate some data and they need to do a bunch of things. You do not need to do this. Plus, you're not defined by the charity direction. You can take this into any kind of direction that you want. So we've done a lot of single questions, riddles, classic heuristics and biases. So you can play with this in many different ways. So I thought I'll just show you what it is that I showed to the students yesterday on how easy it is to use ChatGPT in order to create new vignettes. But before I do this, I just want to clarify a few things because I think the questions show that maybe the syllabus was not clear enough about this and maybe the template doesn't help you understand this. So I'll just make this very, very clear. This is not a PhD or a thesis. You don't need to know all of the literature. You don't need to be smarter than Kahneman and Tversky. You don't need to come with something innovative and you don't need to identify literature gaps. What we're trying to do is to use as many tools as we can, like ChatGPT and the other generative AI, in order for you to play around with different ideas. So already here in the classroom, when we did all these different games and I asked you to put the scientist hat on and then come up with your own factors, you were very clever at bringing up new factors that I have not heard of before. So you suggested a bunch of things that I thought were really interesting. So I think you have this capacity. But even if you don't trust yourselves, which is completely okay, you can use this amazing tool that students up until this year never had before. So ChatGPT and generative AI is really a monster of a tool that can help really boost everything that you do. And in this course, you're not only allowed to use generative AI, you're encouraged to do this because we want to focus on getting interesting ideas for you to be able to make sense of what is a nice idea, what is a new thing, what is something that might be exciting. More about the phenomenon and less about the literature. So I don't expect long literature reviews. I don't expect you to search for things for hours on Google Scholar. For everything that you do, including how to write the introduction, including how to help you get to the final product, you can use as much generative AI as you want, as long as you're transparent about it. So as long as you explain exactly what the prompts are, what you used, and what was the output, so that we can compare the output to what it is that you did, you are expected to go above and beyond that, just in the sense of verifying that this makes sense, that the citations that they give you are not fake and imaginary, because they have this tendency, that it makes sense that you've discussed this, that you've learned something from this, that you came to a conclusion as a team that these are interesting questions. Okay? In addition, some of you really worry, do I need to collect data? Where am I going to collect data? So you do not need to collect any data. You just come up with the single questions. I am going to collect all of those from all of you. and then I will run this with real participants online. I do this using an online labor market. So the way that this works is that there are online labor markets like Prolific or Amazon Mechanical Turk or Cloud Research, and there have hundreds of thousands of people that are just waiting to participate in tasks that we give them. The tasks could be all kinds of things. It could be you can ask people to code things. You can ask people to search things for you. It's the previous ChatGPT without the AI. It's people doing stuff for you. So typically you go up and you say, I have $1 for 5 minutes of you doing whatever, right? And then people, hundreds of thousands of people come in and want to partake in this. What tasks do I give? The task that I give, please take part in my survey. So I pay something like $1 for an experiment, a very short experiment, 5 to 10 minutes. And then within 1 hour, I have all the data collected of, let's say, 1,000 participants. So I can show you a little bit what that looks like, if you'd like. But basically, it means that once you give me all your single questions, once I verify that they look decent and they are interesting, then I combine them all together into one Qualtrics. So I do a lot of copy paste from your exercises to my survey. So you don't even need to set up the Qualtrics. I'll do this for you. And then finally, I run this. I collect the data. I analyze this for you. So you don't need to analyze anything. You get the figures with the statistics and the results. And then what you need to do is basically copy the results to your results section. So no need to do anything aside from say, see figure, and then you just copy paste my figure, and then write a discussion. And the discussion is, of the 10 single questions that we tested, these 3 seem to be the strongest, and they're interesting because this and that, and this is what we suggest for the literature or for decision makers to study in the future. Okay? So it might seem like an overwhelming task. It's a very simple task, and I think it's one that's potentially a lot of fun. And most of the things you can either do with ChatGPT, generative AI, or I give it to you. I collect the data, I analyze the results, I give this, you do copy-paste. So if it seems like a very overwhelming thing, it really isn't. Most of the things are technicalities. The number one thing that you need to do is know how to use tools like ChatGPT in order to generate some ideas, or how to discuss things with your own team, okay? So I will show you an example from the other class, just so you understand the power of generative AI. If you want, you can do this about charities. If you want, you can do this about something else. You can play with this as you like. I will guide you if you need some help from me. And then after we do this, I think, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, then I'll allow you to just like decide if you want to stay or not. If you want, you can sit together with me and run some scenarios. If not, I'll completely understand and won't be offended if you decide to go and do other things. Okay, sounds like a plan? Yeah, all right. Any questions before I start to show you a little bit of generative AI? Anything that you need to know about the task that is not clear? Okay, then I'll show you some stuff. Just so you know how what it looks like, I'll just clarify what the data collection look like. So just so you understand what these platforms, so we have Prolific, and then we have Cloud Research. Yeah, so you can see that on Prolific here, if you're doing a thesis or you're planning to do a thesis next year, then if you want a very large data collection in very short time with a large number of participants, you can do this here. I do all the data collection for my undergraduate thesis students this way, so they don't need to collect data at all. So you'll see that all the stuff that we've already done, so these are replications of classic findings. So for example, one of the things that I've already shown you is that we did a replication of read. This is in the Google Doc that we shared with you. So if we just look at this in terms of the study details, typically the way that I do this is I set this up. So what you need is like a study name, what they see, a study name, what you see, and then some notes about how many pages there are, what is it that's happening over there. 6 to 8 minutes, whether to run this on a mobile tablet. I only allow desktops, and then it's a survey, and then I refer to the Qualtrics. And then I do all kinds of screeners. So you can see that here we collected 895 participants, and they needed to be from the US, and it was a standard sample. And then they needed to be born in the US, lived in the US, the nationality needs to be the US, and then they have to have a certain quality that 95% were approved. And then I set the cost. So for example, here, 8 minutes, 1.2 pounds. And then it gives me some indication that this meets the minimum federal wage in the US. So you can see that this specific study cost me about 1,500 pounds. And yeah, it all completed within an hour or so, I think. Yeah. So at the end, when we look at this, the way that I see this in the interface is that I see all the participants that were approved, what they did, what the completion code is. So at the end of the survey, there's a completion code, and it automatically gives them the money after they've done this correctly. So this is how I'm going to collect the data for you. So these are real participants that I pay money for. I'm going to use my research funding in order to run your single question. So I don't know how many opportunities you've had to do your own research at HKU, but this is the chance for you. So I think that's what's maybe exciting about Project 3. It's real research that you can do with your own hypothesis on your own single questions. Any questions about this? Something that's not clear? Okay, good. So if we go here, actually what you can do, I use, because in Hong Kong, ChatGPT is blocked, and the one that's supported by the university is really, really bad. It's just unbelievable just how bad this is. I don't even know why HKU did that. The nice thing about POE, it's free to set up an account. And if you use some of the generative AI like ChatGPT 4.0 Mini 128, then it's also very cheap. So you get 1,500 credits. Each query, each question using the Mini 4.0 costs you 75 credits. So you have quite a lot of queries that you can do, and it resets every day. So once you've completed that, then you can, a day after, come back to this. And of course, if there's a few of you working together, or if you have a few email accounts, then you can use more credits. But 1,500 is already very powerful, and you can switch between different kinds of AI. Just be very careful, because some of the latest ones are very heavy, and they cost something like 500 credits. So better ones cost more, or ones that are more accurate or more comprehensive more. Another really nice feature, and the reason why this barcode is here, is that you can import my chat. So actually, you can scan this, and it will give you all of my prompts and how I did the discussion with the POE. And then you have a button that says continue the chat. So basically, instead of you having to put in everything that I did, you can just continue from what I've done. And then you can share your chat with your classmates. So it has a share button. You can decide which messages you want to share with the others, and then just like follow up on that chat and create new things, or take this to new directions. Okay, so I'll show you what this looks like. Yeah. So this is the interface. Here you'll see like all the different chats that I've had with this. It's more advanced, but if you wanted, you could create a bot. So you can say, for example, I want a bot about judgment decision making, so that my classmates can go and play with this, and then you can upload different resources. And yeah, it's about the same cost, so 75 credits per query. And here you can see that I chose this specific bot is yeah. So here you can see, like, for each query, you can see the number of points that it costs. So for example, this one only costs 20 per query, and then you can play with different ones. But it's very clear, like, what costs how much out of the 1,500 that are free for you. So with 20, you can do quite a lot. And in this one, for example, you can decide which one you want to query. So here you can see that I queried the ChatGPT 4.0 Mini 128K. And then I gave it all kinds of queries. So for example, I gave it a document that summarized what we did last year. So last year we ran 90 different scenarios, hypotheses, with students, our advanced social psychology. And we had a very long list of all kinds of vignettes. So I'll show you what that looks like. So the task that they had over there, we had real data. So I collected this. And then finally, at the end, what it looked like is that I combined all of the vignettes, all of the single questions into one big test. So for example, here in judgment decision making, you've heard of framing effect, so gain versus loss. So for example, here you can see a framing positive or a framing negative. And the vignette is, so this is a single question experiment. Try and make this bigger so you can see this. Okay, so charities A and B both save lives of those facing likely death. Donation to charity A means 100% certainty that 50 lives are saved for every 100 people facing likely death. So 100% certainty of saving half. Or donation to charity B means that out of the 100 people facing likely death, there's a 50% chance of saving all of them and a 50% chance of not saving any lives at all. So this sounds a little bit like the Kahneman and Tversky, because it talks about saving lives. So it's a bit like if you're familiar with the Asian disease, very badly named. by Kahneman and Tversky. So that was the positive framing. Now we have one that's negative framing. So here we have the same scenario exactly, but now we have donation means 100% certainty that 50 lives are lost. So rather than focusing on the ones that are saved, we're focused on the ones that are lost. So here, say out of the 100 people facing death, there's a 50% chance of no life lost at all compared to losing all 100%. So the positive one is gain, the negative one is loss. And then what you can see here is that there's a hypothesis. So I will take this from yours. What you need to say is, what do you think will happen? What the results are? Now, just so you understand how we typically do this. So we can go to the Qualtrics, and in the Qualtrics, you'll see how I set this up. So if we go to the Qualtrics, this is what it looks like. And at the end, we have the DV. And the DV for this specific, so in the other class, they only have one choice of a DV. So the question is, if you have a certain amount of money, how much would you allocate between A and B? So if you allocate 0 to B, it's 0. If you allocate 10 to B, 10% to B, it's 10. If it's 20, it's 20. If it's 100, it's 100. So basically, the DV here is how much you would allocate to B over A. So what happens in the positive framing? This is what happens. You'll get a figure like this from me. You'll see the distribution of all the responses. In your single questions, you can have a scale like 0 to 100, or you can have 2 options, or you can have 3 options. So in your templates, I showed you the different options that you have, but here you have a continuous measure of how much is given to B over A, okay? And here you'll see that if they have no preference, then it will be 50-50. So we'll just see a lot of people on 50-50, and some people are indeed here. But you'll see that almost no people allocated to B over A, and most people allocated A over B, okay? So what this indicates is that our hypothesis that everything is going to be lower than 50, so more allocation to A over B, was supported. How supported? You can see the p-value here. It's written like this because the p-value is very, very low. If we look at the p-value, you'll see that the p-value is this kind of low. And next to it, you'll see the Hedges G or Cohen's D of 1.04. So that's a very substantial effect size. So you'll get all of this figure from me. Basically, you can copy paste this into your results section, and you can just say, please see figure 5. Okay. So this includes the statistics, includes the distribution of the choices, and the effect size. So it's that simple. So you can see that in framing positive, it was minus 1.04, and in the negative, it was minus 0.41. So you can see that there's a shift between the positive and the negative. And in the negative, it's also this kind of significant. So people have a preference for A. The preference for A is large, but framing does change the extent to which people emphasize charity A over charity B. Right? So we can see an interaction between the 2 single questions. So you don't have to do 2 questions. You can do this with 1 question, but this is just an example. There's lots of different other examples. If you want to see more, there's more here. We just ran like a bunch of those all the way to short-term versus long-term. So 2 charities. Charity A provides relief for 5 people currently experiencing food shortage, and Charity B ensures that overall 5 fewer people who would face food shortages in the long term. So this is long-term, and this is currently. Okay, and then we can see whether this was supported or not supported. This is like marginal, but you can see this one was not supported. So basically, all of this is just a combination of a lot of different hypotheses from people from last year. So what did I do with the ChatGPT? I just gave it that document, and I said the attached document includes a long list of single question experiments comparing 2 charities in a vignette followed by hypothesis. Create a document with a table that includes the vignette in one column and the hypothesis in a second column. So it really did this very nicely. So it allows you to extract text and put this in a table very, very easily. So one other thing that you can do is that after Fiona and Christy created that wonderful document for you, so you can just download that Google Doc with all the single question experiments. And then you can just put this into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize it for you. And then after it summarizes that, you can do all kinds of cool stuff. So for example, you can say, okay, so based on these vignettes and hypotheses and with a similar format, come up with new, innovative, single questions and hypotheses comparing charities, examining psychological factors, and then choose ones that likely demonstrate a cognitive bias. So this is already great because you can see a lot of the things that we talked about in judgment decision-making. So it has loss aversion, anchoring effect, framing effect. So it came up with its own. Charity A is presented as saving 100 lives and Charity B claims to save 100 lives. So there's like a lot of different things, but these are not the ones that I was hoping for because these are ones that I'm already familiar with. And it also didn't do a very good job at setting this up. So what I asked it to do, instead of these biases, do the task again, but replace those with biases as identified by the affective altruism movement when it comes to effectiveness versus emotions. What is their claim? The claim is that people overemphasize emotions and underestimate charity effectiveness. And these are already very, very good. So for example, Charity H shares a heart-wrenching story of a single child saved, while Charity B presents data showing it saved thousands of lives annually. This is already pretty good. This is already like a really decent experiment. And it gave you a bunch of those. So it gives you impact versus empathy, personal connection. So Charity A features a video of a local child in need, and the other one has, so it's just like a lot of different things. And it also gives you the hypothesis over here on the right. But I thought, okay, this is a good start, but it's still not like good enough. But you can give it as many examples as you want. The more that you prompt it, the more that it will give you. So you can have 20 or 30. So within a few clicks, I was able to get 30 different ideas for single question scenarios, vignettes. And then I asked it, for each one of the examples, provide real, verifiable, credible academic citations from the academic literature of systematic reviews, meta-analyses, or pre-registered experiments that can be used as sources for the hypothesis. And then explain how the findings support the hypothesis. And this is very important because ChatGPT has a very developed imagination. Sometimes it comes up with citations that don't really exist. So you need to write, do not use imaginary citations. Use only real citations and credible academic resources. And to my great surprise, it comes up with everything. So all these citations, as somebody who knows the literature, we actually have done replications of many of those. So we've done a replication, failed replication, but still failed replication of this one, also this one. So I know all these citations very well, and these are stuff that we've followed up on. So ChatGPT was able to really tell you for each one of the things that it created, what is a relevant citation and what is the explanation of how this is related to the research. So for a few prompts and 10 minutes work, this is already outstanding. Okay? So it's stuff that you can try with your group, and it might take you hours and you'll just sit there looking at each other's stuff. But with ChatGPT, you can prompt it. And the nice thing is that if you see one that's really interesting for you, you can tell it to follow up. So you can tell it, please create 10 similar ones to familiarity bias. And then if you want more citations, you ask, please give me more real, credible academic resource citations. Make sure that it's not imaginary and so forth. And it will give this to you. So even for your literature review, you're not required to do it for this course, but let's say if you're doing it for something else, it can really do a good job in summarizing the literature for you. So this is already great. One other thing that I did is that I took one of the theses by an undergraduate student called Manix that did this with me, and also comparing charities. So I just uploaded this, and then I asked, please extract all the vignettes. And it really did a very good job at extracting all the vignettes. So you can do something similar with, so I think, let me just show you where was this? Yeah, so it's this one. So Christy and Fiona just created all these for you. So you can see that we've got replications. So this is the one by Manix, but you can actually go and download the replications that we did for Kahneman and Tversky. You can download the one for Richard Thaler, for Heath. You can just download all of those and input this into ChatGPT and ask it to extract it for you. And then based on those, you can do similar things to what we did before with the table. So structure the extracted vignettes into a table that has vignette, hypothesis, citation, explanation. So it really does a very good job. I know this because I guided this thesis. So already outstanding way of just like creating this table. But obviously the problem is that all this was a replication of all these, which is exactly the same chapter. This is not what I wanted. So instead I said, for the last table, replace the citation you provided of Bayron and with a new relevant citations. Use real, verifiable, credible academic citations, blah, blah, blah. And then it really added the relevant citations of people who followed up on that chapter. So this is already quite amazing within a few clicks and a few prompts. And finally, come up with new innovative single questions and hypotheses examining factors, use factors, effective altruism, and I uploaded the book on effective altruism. So another option is that you can take any of the books on JDM. Some of them are freely available. If you want, I can also provide you with some, and you can upload this to ChatGPT in order to examine new ideas. So you can take our resources, you can take all the replications that we've done, you can take some of the slides that we've done in Classroom. If you remember, we did all kinds of interesting exercises like regret. You guys pointed out when you coded regret, all kinds of different factors that I did not think about when you coded the regret, about what influences your regret. So you can upload that Excel into ChatGPT and say, extract all the factors from that and create vignettes based on that. So you don't need to do a lot of thinking on your own. You can use a lot of things. But then finally, when you have all these vignettes, the big challenge is for you to sit together in a group look at all the vignettes and choose the ones that you think are the most meaningful and the ones that are more likely to lead to something valuable. Okay, see if there's anything else that I wanted to say here. Yeah, so for each one of the 20 questions, please again do the vignette, the hypothesis, citation, explanation. So you can, if you want, just follow up on my chat if you're interested in charities. If not, you can start something similar based on my chat for single questions based on Kahneman, Tversky, or the Google Doc by Christy and Fiona. So you can take this in many different directions. Now, one other feature that I wanted to show you is that basically you can see that within one click, you can ask different generative AI to run the same chat for you. So up until now, we ran this with ChatGPT, but then with one click, I can ask it, please run it with Claude. So the way that you do this is that at the end, it asks you, do you want to compare it to something else? Do you want to compare it to Mini? Do you want to compare it to Llama? So after you run a chat, let's say ChatGPT is not good enough for you. Within one click, you can run this with a different generative AI. So POE really takes away all the copy paste. It just gives you all of the generative AI. Just be careful how many credits each one of those takes. But for example, Claude is very cheap on credits. So still 20 to 50 credits for each query. So you still can run a lot of queries with your free 1,500 per day. Okay. So even if you get tired of ChatGPT, it gets repetitive, you feel stuck with it, it doesn't go anywhere, just shift to Claude, just shift Gemini, just shift to the others, and then we'll give you some more options. Okay. So very powerful tool. I am just amazed by what it's capable of doing. The students last year didn't have the privilege that you have. I didn't have the privilege of having this during my PhD and my research so far, but I'm fascinated by the ability of these things to come up with new ideas. And I'm curious to see how you will build on this, how you will select which ones you want to work on, and then how you will improve those or make the most of those in order to come up with some really interesting single questions. So really your main focus is using each other and each of you using a tool like POE in order to come up with as much as possible. Feed it with all the resources, ask it, be very, very specific, direct, do this, do that, in order to avoid it playing games with you. So be very, very strict with it about do not do this, do that. You know, if you need a table, column 1, column 2, every row. So just be very specific. The better the prompts, the more likely it will be high quality for you. If you want import my chat or log in to POE or go over the template or go over the syllabus, make sure that you know exactly what you need to get done. And my goal is for you to walk out of here today knowing exactly how you're going to get project 3 done with very high quality. So if you want to take a break, if not, sit together in a circle, start working on this. I'm here for you. Use me. I'm also like a ChatGPT. I'm your tool. Yeah. Tell me what you need and what clarifications.